What's going on, everyone? We're here on a new day. This was recorded Saturday. You may be watching this on a Sunday, depending when this gets uploaded. Yesterday on Instagram, I did say this would be up on Saturday. Some obligations got in the way, so I apologize. It was out of my control. Anyways, we're here. It's going up. We're talking 3 rounds with Jay. We got some huge things that just broke right now in the mixed martial arts community. The biggest trade ever in mixed martial arts history between two organizations. We've never seen this occur before. What am I talking about? Stay tuned. I'm gonna get into that. I don't want to break it all down right off the bat. That's what the point of the 3 rounds with Jay is. We're gonna discuss that. The biggest deal. On top of that, we're talking tonight's, which may be going on as I speak right now, but we're talking about tonight's UFC Fight Night. It's featuring Volkan Ozdemir taking on Anthony Smith in your main event. This is a huge main event with some massive implications for the UFC light heavyweight division. This can decide who's next for whether it be John Jones or Daniel Cormier. So it's a big fight. On top of that, I will be discussing what this trade, what it brings to the table. What does this mean for the future of mixed martial arts? We've got 3 topics. We got 3 rounds. We're going to get to them. Let's kick this thing off. Let's get this thing going. Let's start this off with round 1.
Looks tentative though. Oh my God!
Here we go. So what happened? What am I talking about? What is this trade we're referring to? Well, let's give you some backstory. Last week I spoke about this company called One Championship. One Championship went on to sign Eddie Alvarez, one of the biggest free agents in the lightweight division. This was someone that multiple organizations were looking for. This is someone that is a former UFC lightweight champion, a former Bellator lightweight champion, a former Elite XC champion. This guy's almost conquered every single organization he's fought with. And now he's moving on to One Championship. So what does this got to do with One Championship? Well, One Championship owned the rights to Ben Askren's contract. You see, Ben Askren, he is an all-around, all-division champion. He is an all-American wrestler with some of the most prestigious wrestling you can ever go up against. This is the kind of guy who people can refer to him, for those who know Khabib, because he's more of a mainstream name. He is the Khabib of the welterweight division. This guy, you cannot stop his takedowns. Once he gets you to the ground, he is a master. He controls you. He can sub you. He can even finish you with strikes from the ground. His last couple of fights, I think he's finished his last six fights by submission and due to strikes. He has been on a tear. He is undefeated. He was the face of One Championship for quite some time. He was the welterweight champion of the world. He never lost the belt. He decided to take a hiatus, or in his case, he decided to retire from the sport. He felt there was nothing left to accomplish. In his own words, less than a few months ago, he went on to say that the only way he would come back to fight is if the UFC made him a lucrative offer. And with Dana White and what the story's being told, Dana White's never really been a fan of Ben Askren. It's just because Ben is the kind of guy, like, if he doesn't like what you're saying to him, he'll straight up tell you to go F yourself. And Dana White is the same kind of individual where he will stand up and say, listen to me, this is what I want you to do and this is how you're going to do it. Don't start questioning me. So it's basically a clash between 2 egos and who was going to get the better of the other. I'm very happy to say that it's about time that Ben Askren is getting his chance in the UFC. He should have been there a long time ago. This trade shouldn't have even been a factor. We shouldn't even be thinking of trades, because the UFC went on to lose an athlete of the year. The UFC went on to lose someone who, quite honestly, was considered by many people the top pound-for-pound individual. He was almost, in some people's cases, the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He went on to defend his title over 11 times. He did lose it less than a few months ago to Henry Cejudo. The individual I'm talking about is Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, the first ever, and the longest reigning UFC flyweight champion of the world. So to see Mighty Mouse go, it was kind of strange in some ways, because he's only had 1 loss in his last 11 fights. So why would the UFC want to let go of someone who's been such an incredible fighter for them? Why would they want to let go of someone who was considered one of the best fighters in the world? In many cases, it can be attributed to the fact that Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, he doesn't really bring pay-per-view buys. He's headlined several pay-per-view events, and a lot of them have had a hard time even breaking the 300,000 mark, which is not something that the UFC really, to understand the business, you have to understand that their money is made based on pay-per-view buys. If you're not selling pay-per-views, it's kind of tough for me to want to put the marketing machine behind you to push you to the limit. which is something they should have done. Because Demetrious Mighty Mouse, he is probably one of the best fighters out there. He is skilled all around with his striking. He is skilled on the ground, and he is skilled with his submissions. BJJ, striking, wrestling, he's got it all. He does it all. He has some of the most incredible finishes in the sport. He finished his last several fights before losing to Henry Cejudo in a very close contest, a decision. That was probably, in some cases, and in many people's minds, the best flyweight fight of all time. So to see him lose after such an incredible performance, to see him get traded after such an incredible performance, was kind of shocking in many ways. But, and somehow, in some ways, One Championship in the UFC managed to come to an agreement that they would swap their two top tier fighters. Demetrious Johnson is now going to be moving on to the Asian organization, the Philippines, with One Championship, and Ben Askren will finally be coming home to America to compete for the first time ever in the UFC. This opens the doors for a lot of opportunities, because you see, now we're about to find out, is Ben Askren as good as he said he has been? See, he's dominated the Bellator division of the welterweight. He was their champion and retired their champion, to where he moved on to One Championship, where he basically took the money, and that was the right option. He's made a ton of money with One Championship. Now this is about legacy. This is about proving to the world how good he is. So think about the matchups that we've got now. You've got Ben Askren. He can now take on your UFC welterweight champion, Tyrone Woodley. We can have these guys compete with one another to see who is the best. Now these guys are somewhat friends. They have trained before in the past, but this is a business. You want to make money. You want to prove you're the best. You want to win some titles. You got to beat the guy, whether you're friends or not. So you could put him up against Tyrone Woodley. You could put him up against the likes of George St. Pierre, which would be an incredible fight. You could even put him up against the likes of Khabib. These are some fights that people want to see. These are some exciting matchups. This is a guy who has not had any trouble in his last several fights. He's probably never really had any trouble. So to see him come over to the big leagues now, like as they like to call it, it'll be interesting to see just how good Ben Askren is. Is his mouth? Does his mouth does his mouth cash checks that his ass can cash, basically? Is this what's going to happen? Is he going to be able to live up to his own hype? Now, for Mighty Mouse, I personally do believe that once he moves on to One Championship, it won't be too long before he becomes their division's champion. He is beyond skilled, beyond belief. Now, with the rule differences, with the knees to the grounded opponent, to the soccer kicks, which sometimes do occur, this will pose an interesting dynamic for Mighty Mouse that he has yet to face. I'm excited to see him go over to One Championship. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do in One Championship. Hell, I'm very excited for him because, quite simply, he's finally going to get paid the amount that he deserves to get paid. And I'm not putting down the UFC from their pay structure, but this is a guy who was the top pound-for-pound fighter for several years now, and he was not getting paid like the top pound-for-pound fighter, right? If you want to compare his numbers, McGregor's numbers, to Demetrious' numbers, there is a massive difference. And Demetrious has been a UFC guy from the beginning. Demetrious has been the guy that you go to when you know he's going to come to compete. He doesn't give you problems. He's the kind of company man that you want if you're going to start a company. So I'm happy for Demetrious. He's going to get paid. He's going to go over to One Championship. Hell, One Championship has done some big moves. You got Eddie Alvarez. You got now Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. You got Brandon Vera. You put your name out there by passing on Ben Askren to the UFC. So there's some big things to come. I can't wait to see what 2019 has to offer, because this is huge for the mixed martial arts community. Now that's round one. Let's move on to round two. UFC Fight Night. UFC Fight Night taking place tonight, live and only. Actually, it's live and free, to be honest. You can catch this on TSN, you can catch this on Fox Sports 1, you can probably even catch this on the Fight Net for the prelims. The Fight Pass will have the prelims for the United States, Canada, Fight Net, Canada, we've got that, TSN for Canada, and Fox Sports 1 for the United States of America. The main event for this shindig, it's Volkan Ozdemir taking on Anthony Smith. This is huge. This is a big fight. I'm excited for this fight. These are two heavy hitters. They are going up against one another. Someone's going to knock one or the other out. This is a guarantee. What this does for the division, it shakes things up. Because now we got a returning John Jones who will be taking on Alexander Gustafsson in December. We've got DC Cormier fighting next week. He's fighting next week against Derek Lewis for the heavyweight title. Once that's done with, we don't know where DC's going to stand. Is he still light heavyweight champion? Is he not? Who's he going to be taking on? Will he defend his belt against John Jones again? Or will he be taking on the winner of this main event? Now, he's already taken on Volkan Ozdemir. He's defeated him. The question is, if Anthony Smith gets by him, will he be next in line? I truly do think he will be next in line. I think this is an incredible fight. I think this does a lot for the division. The division has been looking for some new blood. These two top guys, they are going to bring that blood to the division that they've been waiting for. John Jones has been on the shelf, so it's good to see him back. I pray to God he doesn't get popped for anything in the meantime or whatever's going on. He better be off the drugs. He better be off the juice. He better be back to training to the John Jones that we loved and knew. Unless he was cheating to begin with. And then that's a different story. We can't fix that. But there's a lot that's going on. The big rematch, Jones-Gus 2. That's going to be huge. The first fight was incredible, regardless of the backstory that went on. John Jones being on cocaine and partying the night before. This is still a big fight. DC Derek Lewis, that fight can go any way. Both guys have some minor injuries that they're dealing with. But Anthony Smith and Volkan Ozdemir, this is big. This is a big fight that both men are looking to get back in the division. They're looking at making themselves, they're looking at making a statement against one another. They're looking at putting their fist in the other guy's mouth to prove that this is why I deserve to be the next in the division, next in line. Anthony Smith has said that if he does win, he will call out the champion, which is huge. Anthony Smith's last victory did come against Shogun. You can argue that Shogun has been on a decrease. His chin has been taking a lot of punishment, for sure. I agree with you. Anthony Smith's toughest test will come tonight in the form of Ozdemir. So I'm curious to see what does take place. I'm curious to see what goes on tonight. I wish I could tell you the result. Unfortunately, it's going on as we talk. But let's move on to the next fight. We got Michael Johnson taking on Artem the Hammer Lobov. Some of you may know Artem Lobov. He's the guy who started off this whole Conor Khabib thing. He was the guy, the part of the video where Khabib held him up against the wall, telling him, hey, if you have some shit to say it to my face. He was also the guy that got pulled off the card, one of the cards, due to that whole incident and being a part of Conor McGregor's crew when he came in to attack the bus. But now Artem is back. He's competing against Michael Johnson. I apologize. Michael Johnson's taking this fight on 2 weeks' notice. Artem's opponent pulled out due to injury. What we know is Michael Johnson missed weight yesterday by a pound. Artem Lobov, with all the respect in the world, said he did not care about the 1 pound, did not care about the fine. He will pay Michael Johnson the money that he is supposed to pay Artem. So that's nice. That's nice to hear. To see this sport's not always about money. It's not about taking away something from somebody just because he was only given a short period of time and he stepped up to take the fight. So there's nothing but respect between those two. You took a fight on short notice. It's going to be a banger. These two love to stand. In my personal opinion, Michael Johnson's keys to victory to win this fight is to take it to the ground. He's got to stick with his wrestling. He hasn't done that in quite some time. The majority of the fights that he's lost is due to the fact that he had too much belief in the power of his hands. If he goes in there and wants to strike against Artem Lobov, is he faster? I do believe so. Does he have more power than Artem Lobov? I don't think so. I think the speed is what's going to get him. The quickness, he's got that 100%. But in terms of power, Artem has been there with the top guys. He went 5 rounds with Cub Swanson, which is something a lot of people did not see coming. He went 5 tough rounds. He's beaten some top guys. His record, for some reason, does not reflect that. I believe it is 14-13 or 14-14. He's basically breaking 500. He's even. Michael Johnson is in the same boat. He's had some tough losses in the past. He's looking to come back. He's basically been the gatekeeper of the UFC's lightweight division. Artem Lobov wants to make some movement. This is a big fight for the both of them. This is something that I'm interested in seeing. This is going to be another stand-up battle, even though I've got to say that Michael Johnson's key to victory is to take this fight to the ground, because that is where Artem Lobov's that's where he's not that strong at. That's his weakness. Artem Lobov is key to victory. Keep this fight standing. Keep the pressure. Bring in that weird movement that he's been learning by training with Conor McGregor and Coach Kavanaugh. This is going to be a fun fight. This doesn't shake up much of the division. They're both at that place where they're just below the top 15 at this point. So a win for them can bring them up to another top opponent. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We're moving on now. We're going through this stuff. We're moving on to round 3 now. The last and final round. Let's get at it. So what does this trade mean? I said we were going to talk about this trade. This chair makes some funny sounds. I said we were going to talk about the trade. We did talk about the trade, but what does it mean in general for mixed martial arts? Now, I'm sure there was a lot of complicated stuff that went through this, between lawyers, between the UFC, between One Championship, between all the management teams. There was a lot of discussion that went on and occurred. But this is big for the simple reason of this is the first of its kind. many more can come from this. Who knows what else is going to come from this? You got Mighty Mouse. He traded away one of your former champions, one of their biggest stars, one of the guys who was on a tear, for another guy in Ben Askren, who was no joke, no pushover, a top-tier fighter, top-tier welterweight. We're moving on. We're switching sides. So this opens the door now to a lot of other fighters. They see this, and maybe they might be thinking, maybe I can move on. So let's just picture some stuff. If we got one championship in UFC in discussions, what about Bellator? What about Pro Fight League? What about WS? Well, that's Pro Fight League, I apologize. What about the other companies that are out there? They've got some fighters. They've got some former UFC fighters, and they've also got some of their own homegrown guys who are trying to make it into the UFC. This is an opportunity where you could take some of the UFC names, some of the well-known guys who are maybe just on their way out or they're struggling in the company. You could use these names who draw attention to trade them. To trade them on to one championship, to trade them on to Bellator, to trade them on to Pro Fight League, and to bring some of those top guys over to the UFC. Or Pro Fight League can now, and the Bellator can use these names to promote and to raise the stock of their company. So let's just throw some stuff out there. Who would you like to see traded? Hell, at this point, from the top of my head, if I'm going to think of someone I would love to see move on to another company, I'm not going to pick Conor McGregor. That's the one guy I'd like, oh, I'd love to see Conor go over here. No, Conor's good where he is. But if I had to pick someone, if he really does want to fight again, and he's willing to take some legend fights that will do something for his career, I would love to see George St. Pierre move on to Bellator. I feel there are some fights over there that would be huge for him. He could take on the likes of Douglas Lima. He could take on the likes of Rory McDonald if he wants to. I know they fight at the same camp, but at the same time, this would be a super fight. This would be a dream fight. Two Canadians taking on for the welterweight championship of the world. George St. Pierre looking to claim another championship belt from another organization. George could also take on the likes of Benson Henderson over in Bellator. He could take on the likes of Gegard Mousasi in Bellator. He could even fight Chael Sonnen. So the possibilities are endless. He can have some huge fights. Another guy I would love to see maybe move on. How about Anderson Silva? If Anderson Silva wants to move on to one championship, if he wants to move on to Bellator, we can have some super fights in Bellator with Anderson Silva. Who would we bring over from this side? Because Anderson Silva is still a name, right? So who would we bring over from the Bellator side is a question of who do they have in the middleweight division. Their guy right now is Gegard Mousasi. I don't see him coming back. He's having a good time there. But we could bring back the likes of Ryan Bader, who's on the verge of winning 2 championships in two different divisions. That would be huge for Bader. Bader left because he wanted to make a name for himself and to make more money. And he's made a statement since he's left the UFC. He's won the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship of the world, and he's going for the UFC Heavyweight Championship of the world. So picture that. Imagine how big that would be. You could trade Anderson Silva for Ryan Bader. Picture this trade. I know I'm talking about Anderson Silva, but picture this one finally. You see, it took time for Ben Askren to finally make it over to the UFC. But how about this? We get Anderson Silva, or maybe we get a heavyweight for heavyweight. How's this sound? We trade who is in the UFC's heavyweight division. That would make sense. You trade the likes of a Derek Lewis. You trade the likes of, I'm going to stick with Anderson Silva. You trade the likes of an Anderson Silva over to Bellator, where I feel he would prosper in Bellator. The opportunities are there. He'd probably get treated with a ton more respect than what he's getting in the UFC, and I'm not saying that the UFC has been disrespecting him, but over the years, the communication has just not been there since his injury that occurred and the suspensions. But you finally bring on someone else to the UFC that we have been waiting years for, Fedor Emelianenko. How about that? We get someone big to bring over Fedor to the UFC. That's huge. These are possibilities that we can actually imagine. Before this trade occurred between Mighty Mouse and Ben Askren, we would never have even thought about this. Now, when in the world have you ever seen something like this occur? Now, what if the UFC decided, what if just mixed martial arts in general became like the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, the soccer world, and they started to make trades amongst leagues? And that's why I'm saying leagues, because I do understand that they're not their own separate entities. NHL is a name with several teams underneath them. You could say mixed martial arts is a name with several different organizations. What's to stop these organizations from making trades? I understand they're under contract, but if we can do this one, we can do many others. We can do so many others. There's a lot of guys that would probably prosper and benefit from being in another organization because they would finally make the money that they deserve to be making. Now, I have named some people that are on their way out. I understand that. I didn't name any of the big UFC guys. If you want to start talking about trading champions, hell, maybe we get Cyborg moved over to Bellator. I know she would love it to go into Bellator. You trade Cyborg for a big girl in Bellator, and you bring her onto the UFC. The UFC you could mold something, or if you even want to trade Cyborg for a Ryan Bader type, for a Phil Davis. Well, I don't know if you want to bring Phil Davis back, but you could really do anything. Anything is a possibility now. I mumble my words. Anything is a possibility now. And this is huge for every single company out there. Let's bring something to the table. Let's get something going. Let's make this, like I said, like the other organizations, the other sports leagues. Let's make this an open world where we can make trades, and we can also benefit the company by having longevity and having new talent always coming in. B, get the fighters the pay that they deserve, and at the same time they go on to build more of a legacy for themselves. Isn't that what this is all about? Isn't it about building a legacy, making money, and living and being happy at the end of the day? So every company and every fighter, this is something that, let's see what happens from this. I want to see where this goes from what just happened. Now, we've had one trade, Ben, for Demetrious. We don't know what may come next. Maybe we might get a CM Punk trade. Might trade CM Punk for Jack Swagger over in Bellator. Wrestler for wrestler. Let's see what happens. Anything is possible. My friends, I'm out of time. We had a quick, compact show today. We had 3 rounds to discuss things. We had some huge news, some breaking news with the trade. We've got an incredible card that is taking place tonight. I hope you're checking it out. We have some possibilities with trades where anything can happen now. You can think maybe it might happen. You want to see Conor McGregor move on to Bellator or to One Championship? It's a possibility, but very unlikely. You want to see someone else besides Conor McGregor, Khabib, move on to Bellator? Very possible. You want to see any of their other champions move on, or anyone else? Actually, how about this? Tell me who you would like to see move on. Who would you like to see traded amongst one another? It doesn't matter the organization, the fighters that come to mind that you would love to see in the UFC or in Bellator or wherever. How about you drop that in the comments below? Once again, this is Jay Pooch with another 3 rounds of Jay. I hope you enjoyed it. All my links are at the bottom. Whether you want to follow me on YouTube, whether you want to subscribe to me on YouTube, whether you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's all at the bottom. You know where it is. You know how it works. Once again, I appreciate you for tuning in. I appreciate all of you for watching. I will see you next week back at its regular time. This was a special edition. Until then, peace out, stay classy, have a good Saturday, be safe, and I'll see you next week.